Please raise your hands if you have any question. You ask your question, tell us the organization you're coming from, and thereafter you ask your questions. So, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, I would first start with the questions that we have received. And this one is coming from one Mr. Gabriel from Lagos. Madam, Mr. Gabriel wants to know why you have opposed the independence for the budget office when you were attending to the Senate. Why don't you want the budget office to stand on its own, that it has to be with the Ministry of Finance? Again, this one is coming from one Mr. Emmanuel. He said you have continuously defended the envelope system that has to do with the allocation of funds to various ministries and MDAs in the budget. Why so? Don't you think that that is tying down finances for development in various sectors? Another one is coming from one Mr. Johnson. He said he's a financial analyst from Lagos. He said the Senate recently removed the Minister of Finance as chairman of Customs Board when it adopted its committee report on the Customs and Excise Management Bill. Don't you think this has some implications for the economy? Please explain. Then we still have this one saying that recently there has been public debate on the budget profile, on the debt profile of this country. Can you, Ma, share more light on the public debt in order to clarify the real state of Nigeria's state of indebtedness? Then another one coming from one Madam Shehu. He said, you people have been promising this country that there will be 24 hours clearance of goods in our various ports by the Nigerian Customs Service. Have you been able to achieve this? Please tell us about the Askuda project and the destination inspection contract. Another one is coming from John Chukwu from here, Abuja. He said that a bill has just been passed. A bill has just passed its second reading in the House of Representatives, which compelled the executive to allocate 40% of the national budget to capital expenditure. What is your view on this bill? Please explain. On import waivers, he said that this has cost this country billions of naira that could have been invested in productive sectors, particularly as the funds saved from cancellation of such waivers could be used for development of infrastructural facilities in the country. What is the Ministry of Finance doing, or have you been advising the federal government on this issue? Then lastly, from me, import waivers. He said that it has cost this country billions of naira that could have been invested in productive sectors, particularly as the funds saved from the cancellation of such waivers could be used for the development of infrastructural facilities in this country. Is the Ministry of Finance looking into this issue at all, or are you advising the government against import waivers? Then the last one from me is from one Mr. Peter. Peter is saying that he is a retired federal director and that he has seen that after retirement he was paid only 25% of his pension, and he was entitled to about 16 million, but he was given only 3 million naira out of all these years that he has served. Do you know anything about that, and why is it so? Please help me out. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. The Honourable Minister will notice that some of these questions overlap, so it depends on you to address the duplications briefly. From Kasimu Meriga in Dusama, Kasana State, via email. Okay. The CBN operates under your esteemed office. Are there plans to remove polymer notes from circulation to be replaced by processed paper notes? Thank you. From Njideka in Aba via SMS. Dr. Okonjo-Iweala should please explain why some hospitals charge pregnant women for cards and tests. This is happening in some hospitals that are positioned for free medical care to pregnant women and children between the ages of 0 and 5 years. From Nonso Ifeanyichukwu in Botswana, via email. Dr. Okonjo-Iweala, how does a better GDP affect the exchange rate of Naira to the US dollar? From Rosemary Hillary, studying in Hungary via Facebook. Honorable Minister of Finance, how can your ministry keep in check the rate at which state governments borrow money? And finally, from Indongesit, in Niobong in Frankfurt, Germany, via email. Is there any special support earmarked for graduate entrepreneurs by the Good Luck administration? Thank you.
So may I now invite questions from journalists? And we are taking only 5 questions. Okay, the gentleman behind there in black suit, please come forward, come forward. And do I have anybody in the middle here?
My name is Ariza Soso from Voice of Nigeria. I want to ask, nothing was mentioned about, can you enlighten us about inflation and consumer price index? The rate is coming down, but what does it translate to the economy? And madam, you never mentioned anything
Please, you are moving.
And you never mentioned anything about the sovereign wealth fund. What is the state of the sovereign wealth fund? Consumer price index and inflation, what does it mean to our economy? It's coming down, but what is the good news about it? And what is the state of our sovereign wealth fund? Are we moving forward, or what is the state? Thank you.
Okay, any other one? Yes. Okay, come forward, come forward, come forward, come.
Faster, please, our
Madam.
time is really short. Please, faster, please, quickly. Your name?
Yeah, my name's Prince Charles Otaiboria Omorodion. I'm the sole distributor, Brokers Partners Netherlands in Nigeria. Suppliers of equipment to Star 101.5, Lagos and Ibadan. This question goes to our Honorable Minister of Finance. 2 questions. 1, a couple of years ago, our neighboring country, Ghana, redenominated their currency. And we can see the advantage that has to do with the economy of Ghana. And our preview to be around Nigeria when I returned from Holland, where I sojourned for 5 years. And our former central bank governor was trying to redenominate our Naira. But up to today, they've not done that. We want to know why. 2, some 3 years ago, the World Bank and the federal government set aside about $200 million for we in the entertainment industry. That is about 30 billion Naira. And I've been home for almost 10 years or thereabout. $200 million as loanable money, collateral free for us in the entertainment industry. And I've been waiting for that loan to be disbursed to us because I want to set up one of the best radio stations on planet Earth.
Okay.
I don't know how long I have to wait because I'm getting older. And I don't want to check out again like Andrew.
Okay, thank you, thank you.
Want to reply, sir? Thank you.
Yeah.
Clap on for me now.
I'm Victor Mba Abai. Madam, being a common journalist, I've been wondering what if it is fashionable to be operating on deficit budget. I've been wondering how fashionable it is to be operating on a deficit budget. Deficit budget.
Quickly, please.
Now, I was trying to explain myself.
Please speak.
Okay. Then the second question being that
okay, next. The lady, please. Thank you.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Honorable Minister.
Can I have your attention, ladies and gentlemen?
My name is Mrs. Okonjo-Iweala. I'm the CEO of Ministerial Oil and Gas Company. Honorable Minister, Madam, I wanted to ask, there's been bailout funds for a lot of sectors of the economy, but we have not had anything about bailout for the marginal field sector. And oil being the tripod upon which this nation sits. Nobody has ever asked why out of the 24 marginal field operators, only 7 are operational. And those 7 that are operational are individual funding. From government information, it says that as at 1996, that they have 2 billion barrels that are trapped in these marginal fields. But from what we are seeing, I put it at about 10 billion trapped in these marginal fields, which needs to be explored. And for us to be able to do that, there has to be funds to do that.
Okay,
is government looking at, having a bailout for this marginal?
All right, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm Okokoye Arisa. I wish that the DG, Bureau of Public Procurement, is here, Engineer Mekeze. And I also request the Honorable Minister and the Coordinating Minister of the Economy to help us. There is a major constraint in the procurement process. This is this pension something. You pay your money, and then 1 week, 2 weeks after the PFA, you are now bidding. There is no certification from PENCOM for you to be able to bid. It is simple in the area of tax, because you do tax in 1 year. It is simple in the new procurement requirement of ITF. It's 1 year, you are covered. You will keep on running to the pension PFA manager, you keep on working to the PENCOM office, and you are not getting this document for you to do your procurement. It's a major challenge.
Okay, thank you.
And I wish that this thing be quickly reconciled.
Thank you.
It's a challenge, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Distinguished Honorable Minister of Finance.
Thank you very much. Like the questioner said, several of them try to bundle, and Minister of State will also take some. And then you have to forgive us because we have to rush out for a meeting at the Villa at the moment. I think the quality of the questions are excellent. And I really do want to thank Nigerians, because it means they're really paying attention, listening, and thinking through these issues of the economy. Thank you very much. Let me just take the last 2 that were talked about. For my sister, where is she? The CEO of Britannia Uju, one of our really able women, and one of the few in the oil sector. The issue of bailout funds, I just want to say a general word. It is proper for the government sometimes to support certain sectors of the economy for them to be able to thrive, and support them in a way that later on they can become competitive. Because if government has to keep supporting a sector of the economy, it's not viable, isn't it? But we can't support every sector. And on the issue of marginal fields, I really want to say that the oil sector is a sector normally regarded as having the ability to attract investment. If we have 2 to 10 billion barrels trapped, that's a lot of trapped resources. So I'm just saying the reason why we don't think of a bailout fund for the oil sector is because we expect this sector to be able to attract adequate investment from the private sector. So this is a new angle that I've not been privy to, that you're just raising today, that even oil field operators need resources. I think we need to think in this country of how we make long-term, medium to long-term resources available to our private sector so that they can borrow at a reasonable rate. That way the government doesn't have to be doing bailout funds, isn't it? And we are working on it with a strong push of Mr. President and Mr. Vice President. We are now embarked on setting up a development finance institution that will provide 10 to 15-year money at reasonable rates of interest. We have asked the World Bank and other institutions to support us, just as we are doing for housing. We didn't mention that we are also working on a housing mortgage refinance institution to allow some of our young people, or as many as possible, to borrow to buy a house in this country. So there are certain missing things. I think if we have those, some of these things about bailout funds will disappear, because you can go to and get those resources for a longer term. So please wait. It will take us about 18 months to be able to set up the long-term institution. The housing one, by God's grace, by July, August, we should be through with that. By the beginning of next year, the refinancing will start and people will actually be able to start getting mortgages by beginning of next year. And the other one will take us longer, perhaps to the end of 2014, to be able to set up. But we have started work on it, and when we have those institutions, Nigeria will be the better. Now, on the $200 million intervention fund, it was to be done out of Nexim Bank. You know, the president is now supporting 3 billion naira fund for the creative industries, Nollywood. And we have met with them several times to try and launch this support. And you will see that within this week, you will see some advertisements where we are beginning to use some of these resources to support the creative industry as grants. On the loan, Nexim Bank and BOI are still available for people in the industry who would like to borrow these resources, you know, to approach them if they fulfill the proper requirements, including a cogent business plan. They say that many of those who came in the beginning did not have the kind of business plan that could enable them to lend. So I strongly want to urge you to do that. On the person who talked about certification from the PFAs, please, we'll look into it. This is a new question. I don't know why it's happening. We'll simply look into it. Why have we opposed an independent budget office? We are saying that we should look at the structure of the Nigerian economy to know what are the appropriate measures and the appropriate ways of managing our institutions that suit this budget, this country. We can't just adopt what we see elsewhere when the structure of our economy is different. This is a country very dependent on government expenditure to run. And we said that in a country where the government looms large in terms of expenditures and consumption within the economy, it becomes an instrument of policy for the Ministry of Finance. And at this stage, given the structure of our economy, that's where it should stay. We've been having this argument. If you look at country after country after country, that is a developing country or emerging market, you ask, where is the budget office? It's not sitting somewhere independent. It is lodged firmly within the Ministry of Finance in almost every economy, in almost every country, because it's an instrument of policy, given the large structure, given the large presence of the government in this country. So I don't see why we are seeking. It's not that we're against it. We are simply saying the time is not right. This economy is not structured like the American economy at this stage in our history, is it? American economy is largely driven by the private sector. So the budget doesn't loom that large. That's what we're saying. The envelope system. I think people need to understand this. I don't think they understand what we mean. When we first came to the budget, to the Ministry of Finance in the early days, we met a system in 2003, and so my first time as finance minister, we met a system whereby the ministries, departments and agencies were not really as involved in the setting of the budget. They complained that Ministry of Finance would just come and tell them this, and they have to accept it. We had to change the system because they didn't have any ownership. We said, look, like the modern budgeting in other countries, let us give the ministries, departments and agencies the ability to be able to make decisions on which projects are the most important for that ministry. to be able to complete uncompleted projects and prioritize them. So we said, here's this. We look at the entire budget, and based on the criteria, you know, this is divided into these so-called envelopes for the various ministries. The intention is that they should be the decision makers. Doesn't that make sense? They complained that they didn't have that ability before. We gave it to them to make priorities. And this is why we have this envelope system, to involve the ministries in the ownership of the budget. And I think that it is what is used as good practice elsewhere, and we should continue to do it. Now, you know, the issue, somebody asked Mr. Johnson about the Senate's removal of the Minister of Finance from the Board of Customs and the implication for the economy. Well, I just want to say one thing. I mean, this is happening. I read it in the news. No one has advised me of this. But all I want to say is that we must focus on what is good for this country. The preeminent concern of the Ministry of Finance is managing the economy and the finances to the good of the country. Very often in Nigeria, we do things based on what? Personal interest and agendas. We must learn now as a country to move to managing the economy in the best sense. So the customs bill must be put in a way that it is to the best for the economy of Nigeria. That is all I have to say about it. And when we look at those provisions, we will have a discussion about what it is. It's not about the personality of the Minister of Finance or about whoever. It's about what's good for this country. How do you put some oversight function? You know, so as an individual, whether Minister of Finance is on, it's not the issue. The question Nigerians should ask is that the best for the good of this country? So I leave you to answer that question and make your voices known. Debt profile. I already said much about the debt profile. We have the numbers. I need not go into it. I've given all the figures. 24-hour clearance and future of destination inspection. Very good question. The President has told us that we must move towards 48-hour clearance, not 24. 48 hours clearance. That is our objective. As at now, for goods that don't have problems, we are at 7 days. And for goods that have problems, it can even be 22, 23 days. So we are still very far away from our objective, but at least we've improved. For goods that don't have problems, we are now down from 39 to 7 days. We have to keep pushing because we are not being competitive in our ports. If we don't push, people will continue using the ports of neighboring countries. So it's a very good question, and we have plans on afoot to do this. So please understand that doing port reforms is very, very difficult. We are working hard with the Minister of Transport, but for each step we make forward, there are 2 steps sideways or backwards because there are people interested in this clearance not working. That's what I'm saying, that in Nigeria we have to lift our sights unto the Lord. Yes. You know, I'm desperate. We need Nigerians that think about the sides of the country, not about their individual. Why do we always look for policy to favor one person, one community, one organization? We need to look for policies that favor Nigeria. And for that, when we're doing this port reform, we should support the Ministry of Transport, the Ministry of Finance, and all we're trying to do. On the destination inspection, we already took out an advert. There was an attempt to put out false information that the Ministry of Finance is trying not to allow customs to take over destination inspection, and we are planning to keep the destination inspection people for another 5 years. This is simply false, misinformation, disingenuous, every D word that you can think about. And I want to tell you that this country must learn to manage its ports and its customs, but we have to do it in a rational manner. Now, customs is doing many reforms, but an independent review said that we need to have a strategic 6-month handover period, so that it can be done in a way that does not destroy commerce in the country. That is what we are doing. Bit by bit, they will take over the management of these ports from destination inspectors till by the end of this year, they will manage everything. So those trying to impugn the Ministry of Finance, I'm pushing back at them and saying this is false. And we have taken up an ad to say so. How do we check borrowing by states? State borrowing, we already said in the article I wrote on Friday that there are rules. States cannot borrow with, externally without federal government guarantee. So that means we have to come into it because of what we suffered in the past. Even domestically, we are telling banks that are lending, please, there are rules of the game. 2 minutes? I've been taking so many minutes.
Well, thank you. He's trying to have a bill to compel us to devote 40% of our resources to capital. I think it's not everything that you enact laws to govern. There are things that are left to the administrators to actually do. Our target is to ensure that in the medium term, we actually have 40% of the entire federal collected revenue devoted to capital, and then 60% to recurrent. This is actually our target. So you don't need to go and make a law. And besides, the law will become useless. Because if we happen to have enough revenue to actually take care of all our capital recurrent expenditure with, let's say, 50% of the money we have, then are you compelling us to actually spend the 40 and then keep the 10% because there is a law? This is not something you legislate on. It is our target to do it in the medium term and even to improve. And during fact, I have already said that we do peer comparison and we get knowledge from other states. There are states in Nigeria today that devote 60% of their resources to capital projects and only 40% to recurrent. And there are some states that are not even doing as good as that. So these are not things you legislate. You set a target. When you attain the target, you set another target. So this, I think they are just saying what we want, and it's not something to legislate on. The issue of waivers. You know, before somebody can come and write to Mr. President to give his own argument why he should be given a particular waiver. And this is being approved. But what we have done now is not to isolate individual companies and give them selective waivers. If there is a sector and that has a particular problem, then we look at that problem and we give a waiver for that sector entirely. So whatever good that will come because of that waiver affects everybody. You have level playing field. That's the way we do it now. Then there is this guy who has his complaint about his pension. Well, I think we don't have the details. So what we will encourage him is to put his own complaint in writing. When he sends it to us, we will now invite the relevant authorities to go after the 75% of his pension or gratuity. Then we have Tasi talking about Polima North. That one is a central bank matter. I think we can also forward the issue. The hospital that also charge rather than give people the conditional cash transfer. If we can get details, we can pass it to Ministry of Health to investigate. Because the information given is not enough for us to really give a ruling on it. Then a very interesting question about how can GDP affect exchange rate. I think it is very simple. Even with the cake story, you can see it. If you retain the few people and the GDP grows, they will eat the cake and they have another part of the cake to actually export. So the bigger the GDP, the more you satisfy yourself domestically and have reserve to export. And when you export, you earn foreign exchange. And when you have foreign exchange, you will be able to actually meet the demand of your own local importers at whatever rate, because you are rich enough. So if you have very comfortable reserves, your currency will be stronger. The greater the GDP, the stronger the currency. That's it. How do we check the rate at which state governments borrow? Really, state government don't just wake up and borrow. The other day we presented to the National Economic Council the condition, and there is a whole report in a booklet form. Every state we have record of their indebtedness and their ability to service those debts. So before any state is allowed to borrow, we look at the state's ability to even service existing debt and then the impact of the new debt in its own liquidity position. And we have ratios that we maintain. You must be able to actually keep to these ratios to be allowed to borrow. If you are out of line, we stop you from borrowing. Another thing also, we don't encourage state government to borrow long-term for expenditure. You borrow to finance investment that can pay for themselves. So these are regulated by the Debt Management Office. Thank you very much.